Train travel is often seen as safe and routine, but sometimes it ends in disaster. In this video, we'll look at 5 of the most disturbing train crash deaths ever recorded. Real stories where ordinary days turned into scenes of unimaginable horror. These aren't just tragic accidents. They're unforgettable moments that left behind wreckage, grief, and haunting questions that still echo to this day.
Twisted and broke apart about 10 feet from the top. 33 students couldn't hang on.
On June 2nd, 1997, Quimby Gilotti, just 18 years old, was days away from her high school graduation. Quimby had spent years preparing for her future. That morning began with excitement and hope. Quimby and her classmates from Napa High School boarded buses with the kind of joy only seniors on the verge of graduation know. The destination: Waterworld, USA, a thrilling water park in Concord, California, known for its steep slides and pulse-pounding rides. For the class of '97, it was their last big celebration before stepping into adulthood. No more homework, no more hall passes, just one perfect day to remember forever. Waterworld had become a tradition for Napa seniors. Every year, students packed into the rides. It was dangerous. They knew that. But it was also tradition. And this year, the plan was even bolder than usual. Rumors swirled all day. More than 70 students wanted in on it. Their target, the Banzai Pipeline, one of the tallest, fastest slides in the park. Wide open and steep, it was a slide meant for solo riders. But that didn't matter to them. Not when adrenaline and memories were on the line. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, the park's closing announcements crackled through the speakers. It was time to head back to the buses. But Quimby didn't go. Neither did dozens of others. With one final surge of excitement, they rushed toward the Banzai Pipeline. Quimby was right there with them, swept up in the energy of the moment. She had worked so hard, played by the rules, and now she would let loose. At the top of the slide, a lifeguard stood, whistle in hand, trying to stop them. But the students were determined. They pushed past her, yelling and cheering as they packed onto the fiberglass slide, bodies pressed shoulder to shoulder. 33 teenagers, all on one slide, and then it happened. The structure groaned. A sickening crack echoed through the air. The fiberglass couldn't take the weight. It began to bend, then buckle, and in an instant it gave way. Screams filled the sky as the slide snapped, dropping the riders 40 feet in free fall. Some slammed into wooden beams on the way down. Others hit concrete, bushes, shallow water, or each other. Park-goers watched in frozen horror. A moment that had started with teenage rebellion turned into a nightmare playing out in real time. Dozens were injured, and in the middle of it all, motionless, was Quimby. She had struck a support beam on her way down, suffering catastrophic trauma to her head and chest. EMTs did everything they could, but within 45 minutes she was gone. The girl who was supposed to walk across a graduation stage to take on the world with her brilliant mind and kind heart never got the chance. In the days that followed, the city of Napa was plunged into mourning. Napa High's graduation, held just 10 days later, was not a celebration. It was a funeral in disguise. Some students showed up in wheelchairs. First responders sat beside them, and the seat where Quimby should have been had remained heartbreakingly empty. Her father, Larry Gilotti, filed a wrongful death lawsuit, seeking justice for the daughter he lost. It wasn't about money. It never is. It was about the gaping hole left in his life, the unanswered questions, the park's failures, the adult supervisors who didn't intervene, the safety protocols ignored. In the end, his family settled for $1.7 million, the largest payout from the disaster. But no settlement could bring Quimby back.
We are continuing to learn more about a deadly train crash in Plant City last night. 6 people died after a train collided with their SUV.
It was the evening of September 23rd, 2023 in Plant City, Florida, just 25 miles from Tampa. In a white 2020 Cadillac Escalade, a family of 7 was heading to a quinceañera celebration. Inside the SUV was 52-year-old Jose Guadalupe Hernandez, a seasoned truck driver who had safely traveled over 4 million miles in his lifetime. Beside him sat his wife, 50-year-old Anadelia. Their 3 children were in the back: 22-year-old Analia, a recent college graduate just beginning her adult life; 17-year-old Alyssa, bright and determined, with dreams of becoming a doctor; and 9-year-old Julian, the baby of the family, always playing outside with a smile that could soften anyone. Also along for the ride were Alyssa's best friend, Jacob Lopez, and Analia's boyfriend, Guillermo Moma. They were packed in together, dressed up, and in high spirits. At around 6:45 p.m., they reached a narrow stretch of road, Jim Leffler Circle. A quiet, unassuming railroad crossing cut through it. There were no warning gates, but something went terribly wrong. According to authorities, surveillance footage would later show the Escalade slowing, but never stopping. It crept forward, inch by inch, onto the tracks. At the very same moment, a freight train was barreling down at 55 miles per hour. The train's horn blared. Its lights flashed. Another driver nearby even honked in desperation. But the Escalade kept moving. The train slammed into the SUV at full speed. Sheriff Chad Chronister would later compare the wreckage to a soda can crushed underfoot. The Escalade was launched into the air, flipping violently, pieces of it breaking apart mid-air. It landed far from the rails, mangled, unrecognizable. 5 of the 7 passengers were ejected from the vehicle. They died on impact. Jacob, who worked at a local Chick-fil-A, was known for his easy smile and energy. He loved talking about his old Volkswagen Beetle and bringing coffee for his friends. His co-workers called him the kindest soul. Alyssa had once written in her school journal that she wanted to heal people with her hands. Analia had just graduated and was planning her next steps. Julian, just 9 years old, was still discovering the world, still forming the dreams that his older siblings had already begun chasing. Jose, the father, survived the initial impact. He was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. Doctors tried to stabilize him, but the damage was too severe. He died later that night, his life ending far from the driver's seat he had spent decades in, always delivering others safely to their destinations, until now. Only one person survived the crash. Guillermo, Analia's boyfriend, had been sitting in the front passenger seat. He too was thrown from the vehicle. His injuries were severe: a brain bleed, a bruised lung, a ruptured kidney. For a while, he was awake. He held his mother's hand. He whispered her name. Doctors said brain surgery wouldn't be needed, and though he remained in critical condition, there was a glimmer of hope. Just before the crash, he had texted his family. Almost at the party, then nothing. When his grandmother didn't hear back, she drove to the scene. What she found was worse than anything she could have imagined. The shock spread fast. Jose's niece, Leticia Hernandez, rushed to the crash site from Miami. She found scraps of clothing, a child's jewelry, pieces of lives that had been full only hours before. The exact cause of the crash is still under investigation. Video confirms the vehicle never stopped. No brakes, no hesitation, no explanation yet. Sheriff Chronister said even the word devastating felt inadequate. The responding officers, hardened by years of service, were shaken. These weren't just names on a report. This was a whole family, torn apart in seconds. A celebration replaced by silence, by tears, by questions no one could yet answer.
His name was Mark Cox. He was 36. He died from alcohol poisoning after visiting the Wild nightclub in Krakow with a friend. Now, it's alleged he was forced to drink 22 shots there.
In October 2017, Mark Cox, a 36-year-old man from Loftus, North Yorkshire, packed his bags for what was supposed to be a carefree escape. Just a short trip with his friend, Steven Skiba, a couple of single guys heading to Krakow, Poland, looking to unwind, blow off some steam, maybe drink a little, laugh a lot, and come home with some good stories. But Mark never made it home. Those who knew him remember that Mark worked hard, pulling extra shifts just so he could enjoy his time off even more. usually to watch his beloved Leeds United with his dad Graham. That's what makes what happened in Krakow so gut-wrenching. The first night, Mark and Stephen were cautious. They knew Krakow had a reputation: pickpockets, scams, tourist traps with sharp teeth. They carried only enough cash for the evening and found themselves at a place called Wild Night. The name should have been a warning. Even before they finished their drinks, red flags were waving. Staff wouldn't stop pushing them. More drinks, more time, more money. Stephen didn't feel right. His head was spinning. He suspected his drink had been tampered with. They left quickly, but the next night they went back. It's easy to wonder why. Maybe they thought the first visit was just bad luck. Maybe they felt silly being paranoid. Maybe Mark didn't want his holiday to end on a sour note, and Stephen, not wanting to disappoint his friend, agreed to try again. That decision would cost Mark his life. They wandered Krakow's cobbled streets, the kind that seem charming by day but become a maze of shadows at night. Eventually, they ended up at Wild Night again. The pressure started the moment they stepped through the door. This time, they were separated, led to different booths, different paths, and everything spiraled from there. Stephen noticed something wasn't right immediately. Patrons were stumbling out of the club, confused, disoriented, some even warning him outright. They're robbing people in there. Alarmed, Stephen left and flagged down a police car. But instead of help, he got laughter. The officers mocked him, then drove off. A nearby shopkeeper, seeing his panic, said something chilling. Those police? They're part of the mafia. With dread in his stomach, Stephen ran back inside to find Mark, but bouncers blocked him. They insisted he stay, buy more drinks, relax. They grinned as they denied him access to the back. He pushed, pleaded, but they wouldn't let him through. Then everything turned to chaos. 2 dancers bolted from the back, shouting. Paramedics rushed in. Stephen's heart dropped. He couldn't see who they were trying to save, but he knew. Something in him just knew. Club staff told him everything was fine, a misunderstanding. But when he asked again, a bouncer laughed and sneered, "Your friend is dead." Mark Cox had been forced to drink. Not a couple of shots, not a bottle. 22 shots of alcohol in rapid-fire succession. That volume would kill nearly anyone. His blood alcohol content was at least 4%, lethal. He'd begged them to stop, but they wouldn't. They made him drink. And when his body gave out, when he collapsed, no one helped. Instead, they took his wallet, about 420 pounds. Then they let him die. Stephen watched as emergency crews worked on Mark's body. There was no more laughter now, just silence. Back in the UK, the news shattered everything. For Mark's family, it felt impossible. His sister Samantha couldn't comprehend how her vibrant, full-of-life brother was gone. Not in a car crash, not from illness, but from a predatory scheme run out of a strip club pretending to offer fun while preying on unsuspecting tourists. Polish authorities launched an investigation, and what they uncovered was monstrous. Wild Night wasn't just a shady bar. It was part of a sprawling criminal network. Club owners, staff, and others working together to entrap tourists. They spiked drinks, forced shots, drained bank accounts. In some cases, they even tricked victims into taking out loans to cover fake debts. Over 700 charges were filed. Arrests were made. But none of them have been held directly responsible for Mark's death. For his family, justice remains as out of reach as the man they lost. Samantha and her loved ones have fought for answers, for accountability, for closure. Instead, they've been left with silence, with vague promises, with nothing that can bring back the man they loved.
But before its big debut, major questions about the ride's safety. Early tests showing sandbag dummies going airborne.
On August 7, 2016, at Schlitterbahn Water Park in Kansas City, the Schwab family arrived with excitement. It was Elected Officials Day, a special occasion offering free admission to public officials and their families. Among the crowd was Kansas State Representative Scott Schwab, his wife Michelle, and their 4 sons, including 10-year-old Caleb. Caleb was all energy. He couldn't wait to conquer the park's most infamous attraction, Verrückt, the world's tallest water slide, standing 168 feet high. It was taller than Niagara Falls, steeper than it looked, but behind the screams of joy and marketing hype hid a secret no one dared to question, until it was too late. There were no age restrictions, no professional oversight, just a towering monster of a ride built not by engineers, but by daredevils who played with physics like it was a game. Caleb, weighing just 73 pounds, lined up with his older brother Nathan to take the plunge. Nathan went first. Caleb followed, joining 2 adult women on a 3-person raft, seated right in the front. He was beaming. He never came out alive. As the raft hurtled down the slide, it hit the first slope with terrifying speed, but the second hill, designed like a roller coaster loop, proved fatal. The raft went airborne. In an instant, Caleb was thrown from his seat and slammed into a metal pole supporting the overhead netting. Below, families screamed. Park goers turned away. Nathan, just 12, stood at the bottom waiting. He saw the raft come down. He saw the body. He knew. His scream tore through the air. Michelle, frantic, tried to run to her son, but bystanders held her back. They were trying to protect her. But from what? A sight no mother should ever have to witness, the unthinkable truth. Scott, in shock, kept repeating the same desperate question. Is he really gone? Yes, he was. The days that followed unraveled like a slow-motion nightmare. The investigation into Caleb's death revealed a horrifying truth. This wasn't an unpredictable freak accident. Verrückt had a dark history, one that had been ignored. The ride had been tested using sandbags, and even in those early trials, the rafts had flown off the track. Videos existed showing the danger. The warnings were there, but they were buried, overlooked, dismissed. There were no certified engineers involved in designing the slide. Other guests came forward with horror stories, and yet it remained open. In the months that followed, the Schwab family filed suit. In 2017, they reached a $20 million settlement with Schlitterbahn and the ride's designers, but no dollar amount could undo what was done. Caleb's death sparked criminal charges. Jeff Henry, the park's co-owner and the man who envisioned Verrückt, was charged with second-degree murder. Prosecutors argued it was more than negligence. It was recklessness, but even those charges were dropped. Questions about the evidence allowed the accused to walk free. No one was held accountable. The slide was torn down. The park was shut for good in 2018, but the damage was eternal.
The Condor Club was the first and premier strip club along Broadway Street in San Francisco during the 1960s and 70s.
In November 1983, the Condor Club was the beating heart of San Francisco's infamous nightlife, a symbol of spectacle, rebellion, and raw electricity. Night after night, crowds flocked to see Carol Doda, the city's first topless dancer, descend like a goddess from the ceiling atop a gleaming white piano, lowered gracefully by a custom-built hydraulic lift. It was theater, it was temptation, and it was legend. But one night, after the lights dimmed and the music faded, that same piano became an instrument of horror. James Fazio Feroso was a fixture at the club. At 40, he wasn't just the assistant manager, he was part of the Condor's soul. A cool, laid-back guy by most accounts, he was as familiar in the club's dim corners as the sound of clinking glasses. That night, he stayed behind with his girlfriend, 23-year-old Teresa Hill, a dancer from another establishment. The club was closed. The stage was theirs. The couple had been drinking, laughing, enjoying the emptiness of the legendary room that just hours earlier had been alive with energy. In the haze of the moment, someone had an idea. Bold, reckless, maybe romantic. They climbed onto the white piano. the same one Carol Doda had turned into legend. What happened next feels like something out of a fever dream. In the midst of their intimacy, one of them accidentally activated the hydraulic lift, the mechanism meant to elevate performers into the spotlight. Only now, it was carrying them not into glory, but into tragedy. The piano began to rise, slowly but unstoppably, powered by electric motors, upward toward the ceiling, toward the narrow gap that led to the dressing rooms above. But this lift wasn't designed for accidents. There were no safeguards, no fail-safes, and no emergency stop. Trapped on top of the piano, neither of them could shut the machine down. As it rose, panic must have set in. Fatso, larger, heavier, was misaligned with the ceiling opening. He didn't fit. Teresa did, but he didn't. The ceiling came closer, then closer still, and then it crushed him. Full weight of the massive piano, combined with his own, slammed James Ferrozzo into the ceiling with terrifying force. He died almost instantly. Asphyxiation. There was no room to breathe, no space to escape. The music was gone now. All that remained was the mechanical hum of a lift that should never have been touched. Teresa Hill survived, but barely. Pinned beneath Fatso's lifeless body, naked, trapped and alone, she lay motionless in the dark for hours. The silence must have been deafening. She didn't scream, she couldn't move, she just waited, helpless. It wasn't until the janitor arrived early the next morning that the nightmare was discovered. He opened the club expecting nothing more than his usual rounds, only to find a scene so grotesque and surreal it would haunt him forever. Firefighters were called. It took them 3 hours to extract Teresa, carefully removing the body of the man she loved while dealing with the burned-out lift motor and warped machinery. What should have been an unremarkable night became a headline no one could believe. The city was stunned. This wasn't just a freak accident. It was a myth undone. The same piano that had helped turn the Condor Club into a cultural touchstone had become the instrument of death. Whispers began almost immediately. Dancers at the club questioned how it even happened. They insisted the lift was slow, that they could have jumped off, that it didn't make sense. Teresa Hill was left with more than just physical trauma. She now carried the memory of a night that spiraled out of control in the most unimaginable way. A night that started with flirtation, freedom, and a touch of rebellion, and ended in death, pinned between steel and fate. It was the evening of June 2nd, 2023, near Bahanaga Bazaar Station in Odisha, India. The Coromandel Express, one of the country's busiest trains, was racing along the tracks at nearly 130 kilometers per hour. At exactly 6:55 p.m., everything changed. Without warning, the Coromandel Express was switched off its main track. It was diverted straight onto a loop line, a dead-end route used only to park idle trains. And sitting on that track was a massive freight train fully loaded with iron ore. It wasn't moving. It had no chance to. The Coromandel slammed into it head-on. The force of the crash was catastrophic. The impact crushed the first few coaches like paper. Metal screeched. Glass exploded. 21 coaches flew off the tracks. Some flipped violently. Others were torn apart like tin in a storm. The general coaches, packed with unreserved passengers, bore the worst of it. People were thrown like rag dolls, but the horror didn't stop there. From the opposite direction, another train, the SMVT Bengaluru Howrah Express, was charging forward at almost the same speed. As it neared the wreckage, chaos was already unfolding. Crushed coaches from the Coromandel had spilled over into its path, and in a split second, the Bengaluru train collided with the debris. 3 more coaches derailed. In the span of seconds, it became a 3-train collision. Witnesses said it felt like a bomb had gone off. Smoke poured from shattered engines. Bodies were scattered across the tracks. Screams echoed across the fields. Local resident Gir Shankar Rath was among the first to arrive. He ran toward the crash, only to find a nightmarish scene. Smoke, overturned cars, the smell of diesel and blood in the air. He saw limbs. He saw children. One man, Tutubis, heard the thunderous crash from his village. When he reached the site, he spotted a small child crying alone. Later, he would find out that the child never made it. Rupam Banerjee remembered strangers, villagers, pulling people out of the wreckage, handing out water with shaking hands. Vandana Kaleda had just stepped out of the bathroom when her coach tilted violently. She was thrown off her feet. She landed in a pile of bodies. For one man, Suryeve, the pain went deeper. His mother and grandmother had been on the Coromandel. They were traveling to get medicine. After the crash, he searched through the mangled coaches all night, flashlight in hand, refusing to stop. He found his grandmother, alive, dazed, injured, but his mother was missing. The next morning, someone sent him a photo. He recognized her instantly. By nightfall, more than 1,200 workers had flooded the site. Rescue teams, doctors, firefighters. Over 100 ambulances lined the dirt roads. Buses came to transport the injured. Crews cut through jagged metal to reach the living. Some were unconscious, some were already gone. Others whispered for their families before going silent. Bodies lay beside the tracks, many unrecognizable. A local school became a morgue. Hospitals filled beyond capacity. Blood donations poured in, but it wasn't enough. By sunrise, the death toll had already reached 288. It would climb to 296 in the days that followed. Sudhanshu Sarangi of the Odisha Fire Services stood at the scene and said it plainly. He had never seen anything like this. In more than 2 decades, India had not faced a rail disaster this deadly. It was the third worst in the country's long history, trailing only the Firozabad crash of 1995. Indian Railways uses an intricate electronic system to guide its 14,000 trains across more than 40,000 miles of track every single day. It's designed to prevent collisions, but on that night something failed. The Coromandel Express was never supposed to be on that loop line. Officials began combing through the signal logs. They uncovered something chilling. The system had been altered. At first, they thought it was a malfunction, but suspicions quickly turned darker. Investigators found signs of tampering. Within weeks, 3 railway workers were arrested. Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited the site. He met with rescue teams. He spoke with survivors. He promised accountability. Families of the dead were offered compensation, about $12,000. The injured received less, but no amount of money could undo what had been done. It was the morning of September 29, 2016, in Hoboken, New Jersey. There was Fabiola Bittar de Kroon, a 34-year-old lawyer from Brazil. She had just dropped her daughter off at daycare, kissed her goodbye, exchanged a few words with the staff, and left. Her mind was likely on errands, dinner, maybe a phone call she had to make later. It was just a Thursday, just another ordinary morning, but at 8:45 a.m., the ordinary turned violent. New Jersey Transit train number 1614 had departed Spring Valley earlier that morning, moving steadily down the Pascack Valley line. It made every scheduled stop. At the front was a cab car. At the back, a diesel engine pushing it forward. There was nothing unusual in its journey until it approached its final destination, Hoboken Terminal. Trains are supposed to crawl into the station. They slow to a safe, near-idle speed before they kiss the bumper block at the end of the line. But this train didn't slow down. Witnesses said it charged in. Too fast. Much too fast. The kind of speed that makes your stomach drop just watching. And then it happened. In a deafening instant, the train slammed into the bumper. The impact wasn't just a collision, it was devastation. The front car tore through the barrier, through steel and concrete, and kept going, right into the terminal's waiting area. It brought down metal beams, shattered glass, and crushed part of the century-old ceiling. Inside, passengers were hurled forward. People screamed. Water burst from broken pipes. Electric sparks danced in the chaos. On the platform, where people had been standing only moments before, debris rained from above. Fabiola had been standing there, waiting, watching, just a few steps from safety. The collapsing ceiling struck without warning. Heavy debris crashed down, pinning her. She was still alive, but trapped, her body broken under rubble. Amid the screams and sirens, a college student named Raman Perkins had just arrived behind the station. He had been running late for class, cutting through the back alley. People fled past him, running in the opposite direction, but something in him wouldn't let him turn away. He ran toward the smoke, toward the sound. Inside the wreckage, the scene was unreal, like a war zone. Water sprayed down from above, lights flickered, cries echoed from every direction. Raman joined the few brave souls trying to help. He moved beams, lifted debris, and then, beneath a pile of metal and concrete, he saw her, just the tips of her shoes, motionless. It was Fabiola. She was still breathing, barely. Raman dropped to his knees beside her. He reached for her hand. He spoke to her gently, telling her to think of her daughter, to hold on, to stay. Her eyes moved. She tried to respond, but her voice was gone. Still, she fought. She fought with everything she had left, but her injuries were too much. Before emergency crews could reach her, Fabiola slipped away. She was the only person who didn't survive that morning. In total, 114 others were injured, some critically. Some required surgery. Others walked away with bruises and scars that would never fully heal. The engineer, Thomas Gallagher, was among the injured. When questioned, he said he remembered nothing. One moment he was pulling into Hoboken, the next, everything went black. Weeks later, doctors discovered Gallagher had a condition he never knew about. Sleep apnea. It's a silent illness, robbing the body of oxygen during sleep, leaving its victims chronically exhausted, sometimes dangerously so. He had been cleared to work earlier that year, cleared to drive, cleared to carry the lives of passengers like Fabiola. But that morning, fatigue overtook him. By 2018, federal investigators concluded that Gallagher had blacked out due to his undiagnosed condition. But he wasn't the only one at fault. The systems that were supposed to prevent this didn't. The terminal still used outdated bumper blocks. Automatic braking systems common in modern transit weren't in place. New Jersey Transit had a sleep apnea screening program, but somehow Gallagher had slipped through. It was a failure layered in negligence. After the crash, changes finally came, but far too late for Fabiola. The speed limit into the terminal was cut in half, from 10 miles per hour to 5. A second crew member became mandatory when trains approached the station. Structural repairs to the terminal continued for years, not finishing until 2019. But for those who lived through that morning, the emotional rebuilding hasn't ended. Fabiola's story didn't fade. She wasn't just a name in a report. She held a master's degree in business. She had once worked at SAP, bright, respected, admired. She had recently moved to Hoboken with her husband and daughter. She had pressed pause on her career to be there for her family. Her daycare staff remembered her as the mother who always smiled. Raman visited the hospital afterward. When he found out she hadn't survived, he was devastated. But he took comfort in one thing: she hadn't been alone. He said he saw peace in her eyes in those final moments. And maybe that's something her family will hold on to, even in the face of their unimaginable loss. As for Gallagher, he was fired. But in 2023, a court reinstated him. Today, he still works for New Jersey Transit, though only on non-passenger trains and under strict supervision. A crash that lasted seconds has left years of aftermath. One mother gone, a family shattered. Over 100 injured, hundreds more haunted, and a transit system forced to confront the consequences of what it didn't fix in time. Because sometimes, it's not just the metal that breaks, it's the trust too.
Kyra had been in the lake at the water park at a birthday party, swimming in what was a designated area. The only warning signs were to alert people to shallow water, nothing to indicate the depths Kyra was swimming in.
It was the kind of summer afternoon every child dreams of. Sunlight dancing on the water. laughter echoing across the park, and the thrill of birthday cake and inflatable obstacle courses. 11-year-old Kira Hill, a bright, athletic girl from South London, was there to celebrate a friend's birthday. She was full of joy, surrounded by 10 other children, each ready to make the most of the day at Liquid Leisure, a popular water park near Windsor in Berkshire. No one imagined it would be the last afternoon of Kira's life. At first, everything was perfect. The air was warm, the water inviting, and Kira was eager to leap into the fun. But somewhere in the middle of all the splashing and shrieking, something went wrong, terribly wrong. She had entered the water, not on the inflatables, but in a designated swimming area where life jackets weren't required. It should have been safe. And yet, she didn't come back up. Nobody saw it right away. Not the other children, not the staff, not the lifeguards whose eyes were meant to be trained on every ripple, every shadow beneath the surface. Minutes slipped by, precious minutes, the kind you can't ever get back. Then someone noticed. Panic gripped the park. Voices rose. People began shouting her name. Lifeguards scrambled, unsure of what to do. Witnesses later recalled the chaos, the desperation, the terrifying sense that no one was truly in control. Lifeguards were asking guests for goggles. Staff searched the wrong areas. There was no clear direction, no swift emergency protocol, just confusion, just delay. Kira was still in the water. More than 40 people, a mix of staff and terrified guests, jumped in to help. But the search was frantic and uncoordinated. Too slow, too late. With every passing second, hope slipped further away. Emergency services weren't even contacted until 3:55 p.m. By the time Kira was finally pulled from the water, it was after 5:10 p.m., more than an hour since she had gone missing. She was rushed to Wexham Park Hospital, but there was nothing they could do. She was pronounced dead, drowned. Her father, Leonard Hill, was left to face the unthinkable. A parent's worst nightmare made real by a series of human failures. This was neglect, he said. A lack of awareness, not paying attention. Almost a carefree attitude shown towards her. I would say she was left to drown. His voice cracked not just with grief, but with disbelief. Anger. The conviction that this didn't have to happen. Kira had been in a shallow area. She hadn't strayed. She hadn't broken rules. She had done what any child might do. And still, somehow, she slipped through the cracks of the water, of the system, of the people who were supposed to be watching her. She had a chance, Leonard insisted. But lack of urgency, lack of interest, lack of action is the reason why my daughter is no longer here today. No parent should have to speak those words. Liquid Leisure was fined £80,000 for failing to ensure the safety of a guest, an additional £30,000 in costs, a £2,000 victim surcharge. The company issued a statement of sorrow, claiming heartbreak and cooperation with the investigation. But for Leonard, and anyone who loved Kira, no amount of money could come close to justice. No fine could rewind time. No statement could erase the image of those wasted minutes, that frantic search, that agonizing wait for someone to do something. Anything. Kira Hill was just days away from turning 12. She had dreams, a future, a family that adored her. That birthday never came. Instead, she became a story that no one wanted to tell. A warning, a tragedy, a name that should have been protected, not mourned. And we are left to ask ourselves, what if someone had paid closer attention? What if a whistle had blown sooner? What if one person had noticed, had moved, had acted just in time? Kira was not just a child at play. She was a life, full of promise, stolen in silence, right beneath the surface.
Gunmen have opened fire on a notorious South Melbourne strip club. It's the third time the venue has been targeted in recent months.
December 2016, Melbourne, Australia. 29-year-old Stacy Tierney's life ended in a way that still haunts those who knew her, under a cloud of mystery, neglect, and unanswered questions. Originally from Withington, Manchester, Stacy had traveled halfway across the world, chasing a dream. Her boyfriend had secured an engineering job in Victoria, and she saw this as a chance to build a future, one she hoped would lead to nursing studies. To support herself while waiting for her study visa, she took a job at Dreams Gentlemen's Club. It wasn't a job she liked, but Stacy confided in friends it was a stepping stone. Necessary, temporary, a way to save money for what really mattered. On the night of December 17th, Stacy clocked in at 8:20 p.m., ready to work her usual shift. She stayed late, like always, until the club closed to customers at 4 a.m. But then, the night didn't end. Instead, a staff party began in the manager's office, where Stacy and some colleagues gathered after hours. It was here, in that dimly lit room, that the last chapter of Stacy's life began. Two men, Joseph Barr and Thomas Massoon, were with her that night. But what happened in those early hours remains a dark puzzle, tangled in conflicting stories and silence. At some point, Stacy lost consciousness. Her body betrayed her, filled with a deadly cocktail of stimulants and depressants. How she ended up with those substances in her system, who gave them to her, and why no one stepped in remain chilling mysteries. Between 5:30 and 6 a.m., Joseph Barr sent a message to the bar manager. He said Stacy was unresponsive and that he didn't know what to do, but no one called for help. No one came to her aid. Time slipped by mercilessly. It wasn't until more than 30 hours later, on December 19th, that police and paramedics finally arrived. By then, it was too late. They found Stacy's lifeless body, partially clothed, slumped on a sofa in the manager's office. Joseph Barr and Thomas Massoon were still there. Paramedics overheard one man say to the other, "I think we're all right here." Those words hung in the air like a dark confession, an eerie admission that they knew something was wrong, but chose to stay silent. The office had been cleaned before police arrived, erasing any chance of a clear scene. CCTV footage was non-existent, and the conflicting accounts from those present only deepened the fog surrounding Stacy's final hours. The coroner's verdict was open. Drug toxicity was the cause of death, but the truth behind those fatal hours remained shrouded in shadows. Stacy's family was left devastated, grappling not only with grief, but with a deep sense of injustice. Her mother, Michelle Frost, spoke out with heartbreak, condemning the inhumanity her daughter faced when she needed help most. In the aftermath, some measure of accountability surfaced. The club's owner, Salvatore Aparo, was fined £16,000. The Victorian Gambling and Casino Control Commission took disciplinary action, and Stephen Kiraku, the club's general manager at the time, was banned from managing licensed premises for a year.
As Davy was on the way to the toilet, he passed the entrance of the volcano slide. Although the area was partially closed off, Davy got through at the entrance, which was only covered by a piece of tape.
It was supposed to be just another warm Sunday filled with laughter, splashes, and sun. On February 13th, 2022, 8-year-old Davy Lucas de Miranda was exactly where he loved to be most, at Droma Aqua Park in Caxias do Sul, Brazil. For Davy, the park was magical. He had visited many times before, always begging to return, his eyes lighting up at the sight of his favorite attraction, the towering volcano water slide. But this time would be different. This time, joy would turn to horror. That afternoon, Davy's father, Luano, had taken him and his younger brother out for a quick trip, just a few hours to burn off some energy. It was supposed to be simple. It was supposed to be safe. But inside the park, something had changed. The volcano slide, once a symbol of fun, had been partially dismantled. 3 of the 4 slides emerging from the volcano's peak had gaping holes where the plastic tubing had been removed for maintenance. The attraction should have been completely off limits, and at first, it was. Tall fencing had been put up to prevent access, but that protection didn't last. Somewhere along the line, someone made a decision. The manager, Cristiano Villarreis, reportedly ordered the fencing removed. In its place, a thin strip of caution tape and a vague sense of "do not enter." From a distance, the volcano still looked open. It still looked fun, especially to a child who had climbed those steps before, especially to a little boy who didn't know he was walking straight into a death trap. Davy had wandered off after going to the restroom, just a moment out of sight. That's all it took. No alarms, no lifeguard to stop him, no signs shouting "danger." Just a familiar staircase and a trusted playground. He began to climb. From the top, everything looked normal. The tube stretched ahead, curving downward into darkness. It was the same slide he remembered, or so he thought. Davy sat down, pushed forward, and let gravity take him. But the slide was broken. Not ahead of him, not behind, underneath. Halfway down, the sealed safety of the tube simply vanished. A gaping hole waited where part of the slide had been removed. There was no warning, no net, no guardrail, and Davy fell. He dropped nearly 50 feet, slamming into the hard metal and wooden scaffolding that supported the ride's skeleton. His body ricocheted and tumbled, landing in a shallow pool, just 28 inches deep. Rescue workers reached him quickly. For a fleeting moment, there was hope, but hope wasn't enough. Davy succumbed to his injuries at the hospital. And just like that, the vibrant boy with the curious eyes and endless questions was gone. His mother, Jacqueline Rosa, shattered by grief, spoke through tears. He was a marvelous child, so full of plans, so full of life. He just wanted to play, and that's what cuts deepest. Davy didn't die because of recklessness on his part. He didn't die taking some dare or leaping a fence. He died because people failed to do their jobs, because shortcuts were taken, because someone decided it was okay to remove a barrier meant to keep children out of danger. The investigation laid the facts bare. The original fencing could have saved his life. It was strong, effective, and visible. But once removed, only tape remained, insufficient and utterly useless. The ride was left exposed. The hazard wasn't hidden, it was wide open. The park operated as if nothing was wrong, as if a missing chunk of water slide wouldn't matter, as if a child's life could be trusted to warning tape. The civil engineer tasked with overseeing the maintenance, Flavio Tomás de Aquino Mus, failed to ensure the site was properly secured during park hours, and in the end, it cost a family their child. Davy's death wasn't a tragic accident. It was preventable. It was the result of apathy disguised as protocol. It was a moment of innocence swallowed by the consequences of carelessness. And now, every parent who watches their child climb the steps of a water slide, every family who places trust in amusement parks to keep them safe, must ask, is it really safe? Because no family should have to go through what Davy's did, and no child should ever have to die just because they thought the slide was still open.
A horrific accident on a world-famous amusement park ride turned a fun family outing into a day of tragedy. Years later, the community hopes to finally have some closure.
It was March 27, 2021. 13-year-old Leonardo Luna Guerrero and his family had just recovered from the ravages of COVID-19. They traveled to Playa del Carmen, Mexico. They chose Zenses, a popular water park run by the well-known Grupo Xgarey, as the place to celebrate Holy Week. But within hours, everything changed. Leonardo was eager to enjoy the day. Alongside his parents and 3 siblings, he entered one of the park's most seemingly harmless attractions, the lazy river. Parents floated hand in hand with their kids, and the atmosphere was calm. But beneath the surface, something was terribly wrong. As Leonardo drifted along the stream, he was suddenly pulled underwater. It happened in an instant. His leg had become trapped, violently and invisibly, in an uncovered filtration duct beneath the water, a hazard that should never have been exposed. At first, his family thought it might be a prank. Maybe Leonardo was playing a trick. But when he didn't resurface, fear turned to terror. His father, Miguel Angel Luna Calvo, a cardiologist by profession, leapt into action. What he saw was every parent's nightmare. His son was stuck beneath the water, unmoving. Miguel fought desperately to free him. Other park visitors joined in the frantic effort, and after an agonizing struggle, Leonardo was pulled from the duct. But it was too late. He was unconscious, lifeless in his father's arms. On instinct and training, Miguel began CPR. The park staff rushed in, but Miguel quickly realized they were unprepared. He begged for a respirator. There was none. He asked for proper medical tools. There were none. Each passing second was precious. Minutes slipped by like water through fingers. Eventually, an ambulance arrived and rushed Leonardo to the nearby Amaramed Hospital. But on March 28th, hope shattered. Leonardo died from a pulmonary hemorrhage. The cause? Drowning. The kind of death no child should ever experience, and no parent should ever witness. The grief was unbearable, but the horror didn't end there. Miguel accused the park of negligence. He said the staff weren't just unprepared, they were evasive. They pressured him to sign a release form before returning his son's body, a move that felt more like a cover-up than compassion. Grupo Xcaré admitted that there had been human error. The filtration system had been undergoing maintenance and should have been sealed. But that explanation wasn't enough. Miguel's fury grew when he found out that the hospital refused to let him pay the bill. At first, it seemed like an act of grace, but then he realized it was something darker. By waiving the bill, he believed they were trying to silence him, to make the tragedy disappear quietly, to sweep Leonardo's death under the rug. In the years that followed, Miguel refused to stay silent. He spoke out, telling Leonardo's story over and over again, determined that no other family should suffer the way his had. He fought back against the narrative the park tried to spin. He accused both the park and the hospital of failing his son in every way, not just with faulty equipment, but with inaction, mismanagement, and an apparent attempt to shift blame. He tried to transfer Leonardo to a better-equipped hospital, but was allegedly blocked by hospital staff who seemed more concerned with bureaucracy than saving a child's life. By 2023, the legal battle was still ongoing, but for Miguel, this was never about money. It was about justice. It was about exposing a system that failed a boy who had already survived so much.
Friends and family are mourning the death of a 22-year-old woman who died on the job late last week. Lauren Block worked at Christie's Cabaret in Cleveland and fell 15 feet while working.
January 2nd, 2013. Just another cold winter night in Cleveland. For 22-year-old Lauren Block, it was supposed to be a normal shift at Christie's Cabaret, a place she knew well, a job she'd done countless times. She showed up like she always did, likely wearing that familiar smile. Those who knew Lauren say she had a way of lighting up a room, even one filled with shadows. She was young, full of life, with long black hair and a future still unwritten. But what happened in the early hours of that morning turned routine into horror. Lauren was upstairs in the club with a customer named Pasquale Sterino. It was a private dance, a lap dance, nothing out of the ordinary for a place like Christie's. Then, in a moment that no one saw coming, Lauren attempted a high-risk move. She grabbed a railing, possibly trying to pull off a jump or flip, something to impress, something different. But something went terribly wrong. In a split second, she lost her grip, and then she was falling. Head first, over the balcony railing. The drop was 15 feet, straight to the hard floor below. The sound must have echoed through the club like a gunshot. When first responders arrived, they found Lauren broken and unconscious, bleeding heavily. Her injuries were catastrophic. She was rushed to Metro Health Medical Center, clinging to life. As news spread, questions flooded in. One witness claimed he saw two men flee the scene, but who they were or why they ran remains a mystery. Surveillance footage gave investigators no reason to treat it as a criminal act. Just a tragic accident, they said. But was it? Why did she fall so far? How did she even manage to go over that railing? Former colleague Danielle Edwards, like many others, was haunted by the impossibility of it all. She'd worked that same floor, worn those same 6-inch heels, and still, she insisted, the railing was high enough. Something didn't add up. OSHA launched an investigation, looking at the balcony's structure, the spacing between furniture and the edge, but no finding could reverse what happened next. For nearly a week, doctors fought to save her. Her family hoped, prayed, but the trauma was too severe. On January 9th, just 7 days after her fall, Lauren Block was pronounced dead. She was 22, and just like that, the light she brought to the world was extinguished. Her family was shattered, friends left in disbelief, but in the midst of their unimaginable pain, they found one small piece of grace. Lauren had been an organ donor. In death, she would save lives. Strangers would carry a part of her forward, a final act of kindness from someone who lived to uplift others. Christie's Cabaret gave no statement, no apology, no explanation, only silence.
Rush hour, June 22, 2009, 2 Red Line Metro trains collided near the Fort Totten stop. 9 people died, 80 were injured in the deadliest crash in Metro's history.
It was June 22, 2009, a sweltering summer afternoon in Washington, D.C. Rush hour gripped the city as commuters packed onto the Red Line, trying to get home, to dinner, to their kids. Deep underground, train 112 pulled out of Tacoma Station, bound for Fort Totten. At the controls was 42-year-old Janice McMillan from Springfield, Virginia, a proud Metro employee who took her job seriously. Her passengers trusted her. She trusted the system, but the system failed her. Just ahead, train 214 sat motionless on the tracks, waiting for clearance. Metro's automatic control system should have flagged it, should have slowed train 112 down, but it didn't. The system falsely reported the tracks as clear. Janice rounded a curve at 45 miles per hour and saw the impossible, a train in her path. She had seconds. She hit the emergency brake, but there wasn't enough time. The collision was brutal. Steel screamed, glass exploded. The front car of train 112 crumpled like paper, riding up over train 214. Inside, chaos erupted. Passengers hurled through the air, cries of terror echoing in the tunnel. 9 people died. Dozens were injured, some permanently. Janice McMillan was killed instantly. Investigators confirmed she did everything right. She simply didn't stand a chance. Among the victims was 29-year-old Veronica Dubose, a mother of 2 on her way to nursing class. Her children, Raja and Ava, were raised by their grandmother after the crash. Carolyn, their grandmother, was in the hospital when the news broke. She had no idea her daughter was on that train until her other daughter told her. Carolyn ripped out her IV lines and ran screaming through the halls. Another life lost. 23-year-old Lavanda Nikki King, mother of 2, building her dream of opening a hair salon. Her boys were too young to understand. They ask about her now. Her mother answers what she can. Her sister Kanda hasn't taken public transit since. "It broke something in me," she says. The crash exposed deeper failures. Federal investigators found Metro had ignored years of warnings. The 1000 series train cars had been flagged as unsafe after a 2004 incident. They were known to crumble in collisions, but nothing changed. The faulty track circuit, the very thing that was supposed to prevent this, malfunctioned. It wasn't just human error, it was institutional neglect. Afterward, Metro took action. The aging train cars were finally retired. Newer, stronger 7000 series trains replaced them. A new safety commission was created. A new general manager promised transparency. And for over 9 years, no fatal crash caused by system failure has occurred. It was afternoon on November 17, 2023, in Brasília, Brazil. 37-year-old Julia de Albuquerque Vado stepped out of her apartment with a small but kind-hearted mission to donate a bag of clothes to a local thrift store. She told her mother she'd be back later that day, but she never came home. Julia lived with her 72-year-old mother, Ana Rosa. Over the years, their bond had only deepened. She boarded a city bus for a short, routine trip. The sky was clear, traffic was normal. Nothing seemed out of place. But as the bus neared a railroad crossing, something began to feel wrong. From the right, a train approached, its horn blaring, echoing across the open air like a warning. A nearby car, stopped just feet from the tracks, captured everything on video. Despite the horn, despite the clear view of the approaching train, the bus kept creeping forward. Julia had been sitting near the back. The force of the collision launched her through a shattered window. She landed on the tracks, right in the path of the oncoming train. There was no time to move. When emergency responders from the Brasília Fire Department arrived, they found her broken body near the train. The damage was overwhelming. The loss, irreversible. Julia was gone, but she wasn't the only one. The crash left behind a trail of pain. 5 others were injured. Nildete Anton Vitor, 58, suffered head trauma and broken bones. She was rushed to the hospital. Julio Bauteo Fernandez, 28, was found unconscious, his head injury so severe he barely clung to life. Janderson Rodriguez da Costa, 47, was lucky to escape with only cuts and bruises, but the horror of what he witnessed will haunt him forever. The bus driver, Pedro Dominese Campos, 42, was physically unharmed, but he experienced a complete psychological breakdown. A 19-year-old woman, whose name wasn't released, was also unharmed physically, but what she saw broke something inside her. She too had to be hospitalized for trauma. Police sealed off the area. Still, photos and videos leaked online. Scenes of twisted metal, broken glass, scattered debris, and a city stunned by a single, senseless decision. The video from the nearby car went viral within hours. People watched, over and over, asking the same question. Why didn't the bus stop? Ana Rosa, now alone in a home once filled with laughter, was devastated. She refused to call it an accident. To her, it was negligence. She blamed the driver for ignoring the train's warnings, for gambling with lives he had no right to risk. Julia had only stepped out that day to do something kind, something selfless, and she paid for it with her life. Ana remembered her daughter through tears. Julia was a fine art student at the University of Brasília. Creative, compassionate, deeply empathetic. In the days that followed, that light sparked a national reckoning. People demanded answers. What caused this? A mechanical failure, human error, or sheer recklessness? The video shows it clearly. The train sounded its horn for several seconds. The bus driver had time, but still, the bus moved forward.
Yeah, you're good. We're good. We're good. They're just going to be coming this way. They're just going to be coming this way.
In the early hours of October 15, 2023, chaos exploded outside a pole dancing studio nestled in Manhattan's Flatiron District. Screams pierced the night as people fled the scene. Some half-naked, others desperate to escape a nightmare unfolding inside. Amid the panic, a man named Stephen Mington lay dead. Stephen wasn't just any man. He was a Harlem resident with a troubled past that haunted him like a shadow. Earlier that year, he'd been convicted on federal bank fraud charges, and before that, had brushes with the law over substance distribution. Yet, those who knew him spoke of a different side, a man trying to turn his life around, a man they called good despite the mistakes. But Stephen's final moments were sealed in a place where darkness thrived beneath the surface. By day, Foxy Fitness and Pole Training Studio appeared innocent enough, offering pole dancing classes and fitness routines. But when the sun dipped below the skyline, the studio shed its daytime guise and transformed into a den of unregulated chaos. Loud music thumped through the walls, underage drinking flowed freely, and illicit activities painted a dangerous picture far removed from the studio's official purpose. Neighbors had been sounding alarms for months. Complaints flooded in about noise, illegal drinking, and shady after-hours parties. Police had visited before, issuing warnings and citations, but nothing stopped the studio from continuing its dangerous double life. That fateful night, the simmering tension finally boiled over. Details are still murky, but during one of these illicit gatherings, a violent dispute erupted. In the blink of an eye, a gunshot rang out. Stephen Mington was struck in the head, collapsing in the dimly lit stairwell where the remnants of the party still flickered. Strobe lights pulsing, a stripper pole looming nearby. Witnesses described a scene torn apart by panic, people running, stumbling, some half-dressed, desperate to vanish from the nightmare they'd just witnessed. Police arrived swiftly, but the damage was done. Stephen was pronounced dead at the scene, his life extinguished in a place where danger had long lurked unnoticed. The building's history was a testament to the blurred lines between fun and felony. Months of violations, countless complaints, and a blatant disregard for permits had turned Foxy Fitness into a ticking time bomb. Yet, despite the warnings, no decisive action had been taken to shut down the operation. Now, the investigation drags on. No arrests have been made. The suspect remains at large. Police question those who attended that deadly party, but many remain tight-lipped, wrapped in the same silence that shrouds the truth. Stephen's criminal record and the shadowy nature of the party have led some to speculate the shooting was connected to his past, but no clear motive has emerged. This tragic night stands as a stark warning, a reminder of the danger lurking where regulation ends and recklessness begins. In places where the line between entertainment and crime blurs, lives can be shattered in an instant, leaving behind echoes of grief, unanswered questions, and a haunting sense of loss.